Ever since Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast closed to make way for Despicable Me Minion Mayhem in the early 2010s, there's been a lot of talk about bringing SpongeBob back to the park and giving him his own ride/land at Universal Studios Orlando at some point in the future. With SpongeBob still holding a presence in the parks with his own store being present in Kids Zone, as well as the reveal of concept art for a cancelled SpongeBob ride that was supposed to come to Universal Studios Beijing, there's been astronomical amounts of talk surrounding bringing SpongeBob to Universal Studios Orlando. A lot of people pushing for it. I mean, the discussions have gone to a nuclear level at this point. I mean, pretty much anybody who's seen the show can easily understand how and why SpongeBob would work well in a theme park, and particularly for an attraction. I mean, there's so much material to work with in the IP that you can make a billion attractions if you wanted to that are all quality. On top of this, let's not forget how big of a deal Butterbeer has been for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. That's brought in a ton of money for Universal. So think about SpongeBob and what it can bring to the table as far as signature food and drinks go. I mean, you already got one that's pretty obvious.
Repairing the Krabby Patty.
How about we add some Pretty Patties? Hopefully these ones don't give you some sort of genetic disease that will last throughout your entire bloodline. Why not a kelp shake? How about, I know what you're thinking, even holographic meatloaf?
My favorite!
So yes, we get it. SpongeBob could be a very lucrative property for the Universal Studios. Oh my! Okay, Jesus, sorry, I forgot about the chocolate. Okay, chocolate too, God. However, what there hasn't been too much talk about is the feasibility of this, and maybe the reason why there isn't a SpongeBob ride already. So today,
Hey, settle down. Take it easy. What the scout?
I'm gonna explain why SpongeBob doesn't already have a ride or land at Universal Studios Orlando Resort. Put your toys away, because I'm not playing around. We're gonna get right into it with reason number one. That one, of course, being the most obvious, the licensing rights. Now, we already know that Universal retains some of the licensing rights for SpongeBob, as he already does have a store within Universal Studios Florida. However, those rights, chances are, only apply to merchandise. So chances are Universal would have to go back to the renegotiating table with SpongeBob's owners, that being Viacom, who own Nickelodeon, and come up with a different deal that would include the rights to building whether it be a land or just a ride, as inevitably licensing fees would go up if you plan to do more with the IP. However, as has maybe been evident to you, maybe it hasn't, but in case you didn't know, Viacom loves to give out the SpongeBob licensing rights to pretty much anybody who has a pulse. So you'll see a lot of like low quality SpongeBob toys and merchandise and whatnot. So it shouldn't be too hard to get the rights to this, and it shouldn't be too expensive either, which is why it's kind of least concerning. But that being said, there has been a recent initiative from what I presume to be Universal's owners, Comcast, pushing for more synergy between them and the parks. They want more Universal NBC owned properties showing up in the theme parks as opposed to these third-party properties that they do not own. That is why in recent years we've seen the addition of rides like Jimmy Fallon and Fast and Furious, even if nobody at Universal Creative was like, hey, let's build a Jimmy Fallon ride. That definitely did not cross anybody's mind at Universal Creative. That was 100% a call from up top, no doubt about it. So given this initiative, would Universal really be keen on adding another third-party property to the parks, presumably replacing a property that they don't already pay licensing fee on? I don't know, and honestly I'm sure that that's a reason why SpongeBob hasn't come to the parks yet. I'm sure that that is 100% a deterrent against it. As for the next reason, this is one that I brought up in a previous video that a lot of people construed to think that I believed this. I do not. The reason is that SpongeBob could be losing some steam as far as its popularity goes. It could start to, be falling off. I didn't say that, right? I don't believe that, but I'm thinking Universal may be worried about it because, these properties aren't going to last forever. SpongeBob's been around for a long time. And of course, these lands and attractions don't get built overnight. They don't get built in one day. There are years of time and money spent developing these projects before they ever see the light of day. So the question is, do you put your efforts towards a old IP like SpongeBob when you're not sure if it has the longevity to last. In my opinion, I think it does. I think that it's got plenty of stuff going down the line for it. It seems like Nickelodeon is putting all their eggs in one basket in regards to it. So it seems like it's looking pretty good down the line, but you never know, right? It's always a risk when you take a shot on an old property like this. And I have no doubts that that is honestly a conversation that's come up within the Universal creative boardrooms as, to whether or not SpongeBob is a viable option going forward. And I think that this reason, as well as the reason that I mentioned before, are two reasons why SpongeBob was cut out of Universal Studios Beijing. Of course, we know that it was originally supposed to go where Kung Fu Panda is and was then replaced by it. Kung Fu Panda, of course, a property that Universal owns. So it kind of matches up with what we've discussed so far as why SpongeBob wouldn't show up. On top of this, here's some interesting tidbits to consider. One is that SpongeBob is somewhat censored in China. It's not able to show during the prime time hours of Chinese television, that being 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Not because of anything particular about the show, it's simply because it's an American cartoon and China only allows Chinese cartoons to play during that time. But what's interesting about this is that despite that, SpongeBob, all the way back in 2009, was the #1 cartoon on Chinese television. Now that being said, I don't know if it still is that popular in China, but we know, at least in recent years, it was still very popular in China. So really, that popularity point probably doesn't go against Beijing, which makes the situation a whole lot more interesting and makes this next point even more relevant. You see, folks, there's one thing that they are not going to be able to look around that is really, in my opinion, the #1 deterrent for why SpongeBob would not be coming to the parks. And that is because there are a metric ton of regional SpongeBob attractions within the United States. What I'm playing for you right now is SpongeBob 4D. I am sure that almost probably like 75% of you have seen this at some point in your life. This is played in like a ton of aquariums, museums, boardwalks, you name it. I mean, it's been playing at any place. I think it was like Six Flags Great Adventure for like a couple of years at one point. This thing has made the rounds like crazy. And it's not a terrible 4D attraction. There's a stupid thing towards the end here that, for whatever reason, like it cuts. Like, why the heck would a 4D attraction ever make a cut like that? That's just stupid. But I have no doubt that Universal can make a better ride than this, but the fact that there's a quality attraction like this that's available in almost any part of the country is a concerning thing when you talk about bringing a SpongeBob ride to your tourist destination. How are people going to justify spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands of dollars, to come to your park to go see SpongeBob when they can go and see SpongeBob at the regional little science center they have? Like, you know what I mean? This attraction's available in so many places. And it's not just this. There are also other permanent SpongeBob attractions available around the US, that including the Nickelodeon Universe that is in Mall of America in Minnesota, and of course the newly opened American Dream in East Rutherford, New Jersey in the Meadowlands. And here's the thing, I mean, that one is really brutal for Universal, because here's the thing. As an Orlando destination, Universal gets a lot of their tourists from the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. And having a permanent attraction, a permanent theme park in that area that has SpongeBob there is really gonna hurt when you talk about potentially bringing SpongeBob to the park, because that's like a big percentage of your tourist population who now have SpongeBob at home, literally. That is the last thing that you want, is for your tourist population to be like, well, maybe I don't spend the money to go see this new SpongeBob land or new SpongeBob attraction when I have SpongeBob rides right in my backyard here in the Meadowlands. There's no reason why the heck I would spend all this money to go and experience that at Universal. So that's obviously going to make it much harder to market an attraction like this. On top of that, let's not forget that because these attractions even exist, Universal would not be able to get the exclusive theme park rights when they're negotiating with Viacom. And that's a thing that usually Universal looks for, because God forbid, if their land does well, let's say they build a SpongeBob land, it does fantastic, or they build a SpongeBob ride and it's great. The issue is that one of their competitors, aka more likely, SeaWorld, could go ahead and jump in and they can undercut them with a SpongeBob attraction of their own. Like, why not, right? If you want the full SpongeBob experience, you gotta come to Universal and SeaWorld. And now all of a sudden, SeaWorld is mooching off of Universal's market share. Now, I know that's a pretty extreme hypothetical, especially considering that usually when they sign these deals, even if you don't have the exclusive theme park rights, you're going to have the theme park rights within a certain area. So chances are, since SeaWorld is so close to Universal, they wouldn't be able to build a SpongeBob ride. But you never know. SeaWorld can go ahead and be like, you know what, actually, we want Busch Gardens Tampa to have a SeaWorld ride. And, even though they're not really that close to Universal, they're close enough to where they can easily still go ahead and grab some of that market share. So definitely still impactful. Now, let's apply this theory, if you will, to the Universal Studios Beijing situation. You might think, oh, well, there's no SpongeBob attractions in China, surely. Universal has no competition there, so how would this point even be relevant there? Ah, but that is where you are wrong, my friend, because you see, there is another Nickelodeon universe, the same that's at Mall of America and the same that's at American Dream, that is coming to the Mall of China. That's right, folks. So, regional competition that is permanent with the SpongeBob IP right there in China. Now, to be fair, once this thing actually does get built, it's going to be about 20 hours away, but that's besides the point. No, but seriously, that's not the biggest deal, but what it does prove is that each point I've brought up so far in this video for why SpongeBob hasn't come to the Orlando parks could easily apply to why SpongeBob was not chosen to be in Beijing and was replaced by Kung Fu Panda. However, the fact that they were this close to actually building a SpongeBob land and a SpongeBob ride just goes to show that Universal can easily overlook each of these points and potentially bring a SpongeBob attraction or land to the Orlando parks in the future. I truly believe that. I think it's totally feasible for them to say, you know what, SpongeBob is a lucrative enough property to where we can easily suck it up and deal with each of these cons that I've already mentioned. And I mean, on top of this, when you think about the fact that they got Epic Universe coming up with not only 4 new lands to open up with the park, but 2 expansion pads planned for it, there's even more opportunities to bring SpongeBob to the park than there ever have been. So we could easily see SpongeBob come to the resort within the next 10 years. And you know what that means, folks. It means the best time to wear a striped sweater is at Universal Studios Orlando. Alright, folks, you know the drill. Let me know in the comments whether or not you think SpongeBob could come to the parks or whether you think that it's dead in the water, sleeping with the fishes. I'm sorry. And I'll see you all next time. Been an honor. So long, farewell, au revoir. I'll be back.